This desk is so crowded. Straighten up in here, don't I? Nobody's watching so far. Oh, we've got one person. There we go. Hello, Alex. How are you? King Todd, how are you? Also, by the way, I figured out how to get this microphone to work for this live streaming function. So let me know if the audio is better than the last time. Hello, everyone. Sherlock, 1247, hello. Thank you, it's the live streaming hat. Fantastic. Oh, that's good. Just what I needed after a long day at work, too. So it's another Q&A with Jay. We're going to wait for enough people to get here. But yeah, if anyone wants to start with the questions, feel free. I just checked my house for ninjas. There were not any. In other words, your deductions about me from last time were just really good. I know. I remember that. That was a... You were accusing me of having people spying in your house. Yes. Yeah. I remember that. That was good times. Fun. This is a bit of a two-way conversation, Q&A style and everything. So if you guys don't start asking questions, I will be forced to babble. What is your job? Can I do that with a coin? Okay, I'll answer the job question in a second. I can do it with a coin, but not very well. I can't do the rolling knuckle thing, although I have tried. Here, let me find a quarter. Yeah, that's not that work. But sometimes I can get it. This one's a little bit fat. I need a quarter, but I can't find a quarter. Probably because I've used them all, because they're the only change that I have that's actually worth something. Hashtag stop minting the penny. What's my job? I work as a video/audio editor at a research institute. So basically a less interesting version of my YouTube stuff. How are the card tricks going? Yeah, they're going pretty well. I'm interested in how he could answer his job with a coin. Well, I mean, you know, when deciding careers and you're stuck on two options, the only way to decide that is with a flip of a coin, in my opinion. So, hi, Tiffany. How are you all? Can I guess a guy with just his looks like Sherlock? I mean, depends on what you mean by can you guess a guy. There's a lot of things you can figure out about a person just by looking at them and observing them for a little bit. So, in answer to what I assume was your question, yes. Takes time, takes practice, takes effort, takes a little bit of imagination, takes a lot of study. Hey, Practical. do you think was going through Sherlock's head when he first met Irene Adler? Probably the similar things that were going through my head when I first met my girlfriend. Books I might suggest? Uh, really, this whole shelf here. So we've got the monographs by Ben Cardall. We have um, What Everybody Is Saying by Joe Navarro, Mindhunter by John Douglas, Telling Lies by Paul Ekman. Really anything by Paul Ekman. This is just the only thing I have of his as of right now, but all of his work is phenomenal. The Mask of Sanity, if you're into criminal psychology and psychopathy, that same goes for Mindhunter as well. If you're not into criminal psychology, there's some stuff you can get out of it for just general deduction and profiling. But definitely the Mask of Sanity only if you're interested in psychology uh, or criminal psychology. Psychopath Whisperer, same thing. The Ellipsis Manual by Chase Hughes, particularly if you're into um, uh, social engineering, but that has some body language stuff in it too. Some other books that I don't have with me right now, like um, The Definitive Book on Body Language by Barbara and Alan Pease. That is a good one. Maria Konikova's book, Mastermind, How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes. That's a good one. Yeah, those are just like good books off the top of my head. As far as fiction goes, I'd highly recommend the works of Dostoevsky. It's one of my favorites. Lord of the Rings, um, and of course the Sherlock Holmes canon. That would be my top three fiction series that I would recommend. Recently discovered your channel. Good to have you on, Hack and Tech. You're the guy who's been spewing hate, eh? Says L. Yeah, that would be me. Just that guy spreading hate. Near will take care of it. All right, sounds great. What exercise do you recommend for memory training to do on a day-to-day basis? I mean, like daily drills. Um, Memorizing a deck of cards. That's a good. What you need is a system for the cards. So basically, every card needs to have a an image you associate with it. So for me, the four of clubs is corn. Is just like a bunch of corn because the way that I break it up mnemonically is so basically every the image you associate with every card starts with the letter of the suit. So all the clubs start with a C or a K. All the hearts start with an H. Um, so that primes you for the suit, and then it also the word rhymes with the number. So for corn, you can kind of hear it. So it makes sense to me. It may not make sense to you. So you have to use some poetic license with it. So yeah, that's how I do it. So once you have all the cards with a mnemonic association, then you have to have either 52 pegs, so all 52 numbers with an image associated with them, just like one gun, two shoe, three tree, four door, five hut, etc., etc., etc. Or you need a Mind Palace journey with 52 pegs. That's what I personally use for it. Um, so that's a good way of doing memory training. Also, I use my Mind Palace for memorizing stuff for school. So, who's right next to you 90% of the time? Fred, he's still here. He's still here. Put him right there for you. Oh, you memorize exit cards? Okay, cool. So I just use it for the information that I learn and study for school, as well as like stuff I memorize for deduction purposes. So like stuff about the hands and which is what I'm primarily focusing on right now for storing in my mind palace. You can even store smells in your mind palace. That's a little bit more tricky. You have to basically the way you memorize a smell is basically you smell something and the first thing that you think of, like whatever that smell makes you think of, that's your visual association for it. Um, Also, just like what I sometimes like to do is make a list of maybe 20, 30 items and see how fast I can memorize them. Uh, and Or I'll have someone else make the list for me. Uh, there's this one episode in The Mentalist where he had to memorize a list of things while he was being uh, between being like dunked in his head dunked in water. So I've tried that a couple times. That's pretty difficult. It's pretty fun though, as long as you have someone who's not going to drown you. No, nothing specific planned for this live stream. Just a Q&A. Can you tell us your biggest mistake when deducing someone or something? Not. I can't really think of a specific, like the specific biggest mistake, other than like really personal things, as far as deduction. But I can tell you sort of thematically what uh, what usually goes wrong in my thought process with the recent example. It's over intellectualization. Sometimes I get thinking about a thing too much and I miss the obvious answer. Right? So yeah, I really don't have a specific example for that. That's easy to without going off on a tangent. But basically, like I'll over intellectualize something or assume someone is being more intellectual than they are about something. Like I'll assume rationality before I assume um, just happenstance or habit, and so that's a bit of a problem. I have to look out for that. I get too inclined to see things from an intellectual standpoint. Do you believe in God or a God? I don't answer those sorts of questions on live streams. Just the reason I address that is just to let everybody know. I don't talk about those sorts of subjects here. Politics, religion, you can talk about that. That's fine. Just not. This is not the place for it. I don't think. Uh, both of those subjects are. They put people into boxes, and I don't want to be put into a box. So the benevolent overlord, our King Fred. He's always the host side. Also, did anyone ever make the Fred the Frog cult subreddit? Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing if anyone did that. I haven't checked. Um, can you do something from basic understanding for Mind Palace? I'm not quite sure I understand your question. Sebastian, you said I use my mind palace to memorize text, but I might try the other method, BTW. Which exercises do you do for training yourself to be not biased, being objective, and seeing only data? Breathing exercises really help. Mindfulness meditation really helps. Metacognition is Metacognition is a term that refers to basically your self-evaluation of your cognitive processes. So and then there's metacognitive dissonance. These are things I've been reading about lately, and it's getting a little too meta at that point. Metacognitive dissonance is um, when you feel as though you are more accurate in evaluating your own performance than you actually are. So you actually have to evaluate your own metacognition, which is evaluating your cognition. So like there's so I haven't figured out the best way to do this. I'm playing around with a lot of things right now, and I'll probably make a video about it once all that happens. But I'm figuring out a way to systematically evaluate my cognitive performance and my stream of thought and my conclusions in the best way possible, um, just in my head. But there's a really easy tool to use, and it's one that we've been using for a long, long time, and that's just pen and paper. Pen and paper is like I am lost without my notebooks because whenever I'm stuck on something, whether it's a deduction or something else, or a complex analysis of a situation, or anything like that, writing it down, mapping it out on paper helps you be more objective. Especially like journaling also helps. Like if you're dealing with personal things, I've found that journaling about your emotional reactions to things helps you evaluate those emotional reactions and emotional triggers more objectively later when you read them over because you're just reading the data. especially if, like, in that situation where you're feeling emotional, you just write down what you see. When you go back and read it, then you won't have the emotional flare up. You'll just see what you wrote down about the information. Now, of course, you might only write down the information that your emotional voice is telling you to write down, but like if you can fight against that a little bit, you can at least have some semblance of objectivity later when you review the situation. Also, knowing when you are primed to not be objective, I would say, is important. Understanding where your own boundaries are and where you sort of where you are likely to fall and stumble. That's extremely important uh, to really know when you can trust yourself. 'Cause knowing when and in what situations you can trust yourself is important. So yeah. Hi Jordan, great to see you. Every time I try to do something in real world, I feel like it probably has unlimited number of scenarios. How do I overcome this problem? Well, yeah, there is essentially, if you take any one piece of information, there's essentially an infinite number of possible interpretations to it. Now, there are a finite number of viable interpretations when you consider that piece of data in congruence with all the other piece of data that's available. And so this is what we call abductive reasoning. It's sort of like um, if you oversimplifying it, is basically like process of elimination. So if you use deductive reasoning for interpreting observations, so you look at something and based off of its characteristics, you determine what it is in its singularity. It doesn't necessarily tell you anything about why it's there. That's where inductive reasoning comes in. So with inductive reasoning, you make inferences about those observations that you have interpreted as to what they are. Once you've interpreted as to what they are with inductive reasoning, then you can work backwards and use process of elimination, abductive reasoning. So with abductive reasoning, you essentially take those inferences that you have and you cross-reference them with all the data that's available. So if an inference doesn't line up, if an inference lines up with certain pieces of information but not others, if those pieces of information are connected and if they're in the same data set, if you're evaluating them in the same setting on the same person, they most likely are connected in some way, even if minutely. Then, if it doesn't line up with all the viable information, then that inference, that theory, that hypothesis, it is invalid. So you eliminate that based off of the fact that you know the evidence that you're looking at exists, so you can't rule that out. And if it's incompatible with the hypothesis and the inference that you have, then one of these things is not supposed to be there, and it's the thing that's conceptual, not the thing that's actually there. So from there, you can eliminate inferences and potential interpretations based off of how information lines up with other information. Another thing you can help yourself do to help with more of the like subjective aspect of it, the like how you feel about um, like your lack of confidence, because confidence is an important thing. Confidence, not arrogance. Okay, so it's important that you be confident in your own abilities, but in order to have any sort of confidence in your own abilities, you have to know what your abilities are. So an important thing you need to do in your training, especially early on, is actually go and see if you're right about things. And you don't even have to like talk to people in a way that explains that you're trying to figure this sort of thing out. You can just talk to a person that you've made deductions about and get to know them through conversation. And from that, you can evaluate your performance as to how much you got right about them. So you don't even have to like risk humiliating yourself. You can just talk to them and see how right you were. So that'll give you more of an idea of where you stand, and that will help you feel more confident and help you continue to grow and train and practice and learn from your mistakes. I have a hard time getting out of the house. Is it possible to learn how to read someone without being in person? Um, See, I had a similar problem because in my last 3 years of high school, I was homeschooled. So, and I lived in more of the suburban area, not in the downtown area like I live now. So it was hard to get out and see people. Um, So I did go out as often as I could. So take every opportunity you can. But I really worked heavily on the concept of it, the conceptual angle, and I would work really hard when I was just at home alone. I would just work on the conceptual angle, and then and the observation angle. That's something you can always train and practice on. And the memory angle, I worked on that a lot. So and then in the situations where you can see people, then you start up seeing how you can apply it to them. So it's not ideal, but you can work through it. It's at least something. Reality, not reality TV, but like documentaries. Watch documentaries that are about people, and you can make some deductions through that. Of course, you're still watching it from a certain lens, literally and figuratively, so you're not getting the whole picture, but there's still plenty you can get from an interview or documentary. Same thing with YouTube videos. Again, there's like my highly edited YouTube videos portray a character, and a lot of people don't like that character. They feel uh, like I get plenty of comments on my more viewed videos about how people think I'm a prick, and quite possibly I am, but of course I'm playing that up as the character hosting a show to be interesting, right? So, and take that with every YouTuber. Every YouTuber is portraying some sort of character for their audience. Now, these live streams are a lot more candid, they're a lot more natural. So, this is going to be when you see me at my most me, as far as you will probably ever see me. Now, talking to me at a coffee shop where we're actually having a conversation, that's a totally different me. And of course, everyone has their own myriad of different personas for different situations. So you know, who is the real one is a very deep philosophical question. But you know, if you're going to make deductions about YouTubers, is my point. You have to be selective of the videos that that you're basing your profile off of, because a lot of those videos can be misleading. Uh, so yeah, there's like subreddits out there on Reddit that post pictures of rooms and stuff, so that can help you um, work on your deductive abilities um, for at least like environments. Uh, and I think as far as the Discord that we have and practical deduction, could you put the Discord link, the invite link in the chat here for the Discord? I'm not sure if people are posting pictures of people, but you could propose that if you go on the Discord server, because I know there are some deduction exercises that people are putting up there. But yeah, Fred the Frog is the new Bendy. Don't say that. Like, if I'm a noob just watching Mind Palace episode, sure, like I want to build my own Mind Palace. How do I start? Okay. So that episode of Sherlock is very misleading about about mind palaces. I know because I tried building my mind palace based off of what I gleaned from that episode, and it did not work. So basically, what you need to build a mind palace is an actual location or a digital location. So if you have if you play like a game like Skyrim or something, like you could use the buildings in one of the cities in Skyrim too as a mind palace. Uh, I use the building that I work in, my office building. It just works really well for that. It's got a nice layout, plenty of places to peg. So basically, what you have to do is you have to create a journey in that location. So basically, you go from start to finish. You will go to various items in the rooms in a set order, and you will go through it in that order every time. This is called your journey. So you go to one item, you stop at it, so it could be a door, and then you go to the next one, it could be a window, and then the next one, maybe a TV. I'm going through my mind piles right now. And then the next one, it's a sign, and then so you step to each item in order, right? And so when you're building the mind palace, you actually go to that location, whether it's the digital location, you pull up the game, right? Or it's a physical location, you go to the place, and then you walk through it in that order, stopping at every peg for like a good solid while to visually sear that image into your brain, and you go through it through that journey, and then you'll go through it again, and then again, and then again, and then I say about 5 times going through each chunk of your journey. So, like if you map it out by room, do one room at a time, right? And so go through the journey with each individual peg 5 times, right? And each cycle you make through it, before you do it again, close your eyes and go through it in your head, and then do it again. Close your eyes, go through it in your head. Do it again. Close your eyes, do it in your head 5 times. That will sear the layout in your brain so that you can close your eyes and it's there. It's there. Now you can start adding the things you want to remember in there. And then that's just a matter of being able to conceptually, to visually represent concepts. And you can do that based off of phonetics. You can do that based off of how it makes you feel. You can do it based off of a lot of things. Basically, whatever whatever image you can associate with the concept or the item you are trying to remember, use that, and then you stick it onto the item that is the peg in your mind palace that is free. And you can order it by the rooms and have some sort of organization structure, which I recommend. So yeah, that's how you do it. Yes, writing things down is indispensable. I have, let me grab my notebook and show you. So this is the notebook that I carry around. And so I have several different ways of making deductions on paper. So I have this is what I call a spider chart. So basically here you have different categories of data. So this is apparel, and this is apparel and paraphernalia. So this is whatever they're wearing and whatever items that they're carrying with them. This is physicality. This is what the person would look like, like down to the physical attributes of the person, their skin, their body tone, what muscle groups are developed, eye color, hair color, tan lines, even tattoos, because that has been, implanted into the skin. So it's a part of their body now. So I would characterize that as such. Verbal communication, this is more to do with the way they say things. So vocal pitch, change in pitch, sentence structure, word choice, that's more important than the things that they actually say. Although the things they actually say are also important, but how they say it's more important. And then nonverbal communication. So that's pretty self-explanatory. You basically, these lines, these are spokes, these are pieces of information. I write down what the information is, the observation is, on that line, and then like connections between two, and they can cross connect between sets of data. So apparel can connect with physicality, and verbal communication can connect with nonverbal communication, vice versa, and even across all the way from here to here. And so these are the connections between the data. This is the beginning of an inference or a hypothesis, or just an explanation for how those things connect to each other. And then that helps you visually map out the data so that you can then pour over it and analyze it and make your inferences and hypotheses, and then check them through abductive reasoning. And then you write down all your conclusions on the opposite page. And yeah, so this is a combination of a profile and time-specific deductions. So time-specific deductions are things that they have, like deducing things that they have done during that day or recently or things like that. A profile would be general aspects of that person, their life story, that sort of thing. Another one right here. And then, I'm also journaling. So I do little sketches, and I like write in a narrative structure about some of the things that I'm observing, like different ideas that I'm getting from the deductions that I'm making for like future reference, like thematic things and like conceptual reoccurrences. Um, this is where I mapped out like a situation as opposed to reading a person, I was reading a situation, and this was more of a linear way of doing that. Um, but it was a sort of multi-tiered linear. So it was non-linear, but it was parallel in that way. So it's kind of weird. Um, and so more I've taken to doing more journaling than the spider charts. That I found is becoming a little bit more helpful. I'll do a little sketch here and there just to because drawing helps me think. Um, and I'll journal about like I've been journaling a lot lately, not just about the deductions, but about like inner workings in my head. It helps. It's been helping me organize my thoughts, which is helping organize everything else, which is helping with deduction. So writing in paper and pencil, those are like some of the most indispensable tools. Um, so I'm also combining the spider charts and other data organization tools that I have with the journaling. So in this instance, I didn't have any verbal communication or nonverbal communication. The subject was slouched down in a chair across a room from me, so the posture was negligible as far as everything else was concerned, and I didn't hear him speak a word, so I didn't have any data to go with for the verbal and nonverbal communication. So I just had apparel and paraphernalia and physicality. So yeah, so for anyone who wanted to see that, that's kind of how I organize my data. Uh, I use I use wow, okay. I use voice recording instead of journaling. I'm too manic in my emotional states to write well. I also think faster than I write, but I talk at a good speed to convey my feelings, at least to myself. I've tried voice memoing. It doesn't work for me as well. I prefer to write things down. But like again, whatever system you find works for you, go for it. You told us you have a girlfriend. How did you meet her? Did you deduce her the first time you met her, or uh, so we met in a coffee shop. I was reading a book. She was reading a book. I eventually worked up the courage to ask her what she was reading, and then we started talking. And I don't remember exactly how the conversation ended up this way, but I made a comment about her phone case, and she was like, "Oh yeah, what does that read?" And so I was like, "Well, I'm so glad you asked." So um, I made like an on the spot like bare bones profile because that was not really what was going through my head at the time. So I had to sort of figure things out quick. But I was surprised that I managed to get a few broad basic things in under 2 seconds. So yeah, as far as other questions about my girlfriend, we're gonna leave it at that. Like so, I'm okay with that. Was sort of a deduction question as well. So that's that's where we'll leave that. You should totally teach a whole class on this subject. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that with Patreon, but my scheduling abilities are not the best. So, and communicating with my uh, patrons has been difficult. Trying to consolidate it on Discord did not work. So, I work at a call center. I try to deduce things about people, but the only thing that I can tell is the emotional status, age, race, and education. Can you really deduce if someone is a smoker by their voice? You can, in fact, deduce if someone is a smoker by their voice. So it has to do with the sort of reverberance in the voice. So, like, if I were to dive deeper into my vocal range, you could sort of hear that. You hear that sort of reverberance, right? So, so that's more from like stressing those vocal cords and like trying to constrict the voice box in a way that passes air through it in a way that gives it more reverberance. And sometimes I can get a little bit deeper. Right now, my voice is kind of going, so I can't really explain it the way that I would like. But basically, if you think about it, a smoker's voice kind of sounds like someone who has a perpetual cold because there's a lot of stuff. So if I were to like kick up a bunch of mucus in the back of my throat like that, that's more of what it would be like uh, if I was a smoker, because like tar and things and blood and it all gets clogged up back there, just like mucus does when you have a cold. And so it it does. You can hear it. Um, like for instance, Benedict Cumberbatch, he smokes, and you can hear it in his voice. But a lot of that is also due to his vocal training. So so you can sort once you like, and this is important when you're learning how to interpret observations. You have to actually go out and figure out what those things look like or sound like or smell like. So like you have to go around people you know are smokers and see if you can start to notice what their voices generally sound like in comparatively to non-smokers, and from that you can then get a better idea of what I'm trying to say, because um, like there's only so much I can explain with words as far as how something sounds. Like if as far as something smells goes, that's a whole nother story. That's even more difficult. It's easier to describe what things look like, but even then, so you have to go out and do the legwork yourself on some of that. But yes, as far as all the other things that you're deducing from calls, that's all pretty solid. I wouldn't expect you to get much more than that. Um, so I'd say you're on the right road. If I remember correctly, you take psychology and study it personally. You also mentioned personas, and well, anyone will that's Jung. So thoughts on his work? I'm actually a huge fan of Carl Jung. Right now, I'm reading. It's over there right now. It's a book called "The Origins and the History of Consciousness" by Eric Neumann. So obviously, that's not Carl Jung, but Eric Neumann was one of Jung's favorite students, and in the foreword to that book, which is written by Jung, he said something along the lines of, "I was a pioneer of this study, but Neumann is more of a benefactor of my pioneering, and he can therefore go further and consider things that I wasn't able to because I was considering all the fundamental possibilities of which there are, you know." There's so many fundamental possibilities that laying the groundwork from being a pioneer of something is much more difficult than being a benefactor of that pioneering work. So basically, that book is like an introductory to Jungian psychology, and it attempts to explain how the evolution of the individual's consciousness mirrors the evolution of human consciousness as a species and society's consciousness through history. It's a really interesting book, and I love the model that he has. Obviously, like anything else, it's not universally transferable. I would say probably as close as you can get, but it's still a generalization, just like any other personality or psychoanalysis model. Everything is a generalization when you're talking about people, especially when you're talking about everyone, like a large group of people, or in Jung's case, literally everyone throughout history as a human being, um, conforming to these archetypes, which again, it borders on philosophy and beyond the realm of empirical science for sure. But but I kind of like that because I was raised by an artist, but I've always liked science, which is why I like this field because it blends art and science in a very um, in a very functional way. So I appreciate Jung's work and I like studying it. And, I'm still trying to understand a lot of it, so I don't really have a good commentary on it quite yet. But yeah. What major do you find to be the best for the deductionist? I find psychology, journalism, criminology. What about you? Those are all fantastic majors. I'm personally doing psychology right now. I intend to get into criminal psychology eventually, but investigative journalism, especially if you want to take this to the private investigator route. That's definitely a good route. And criminology, especially if you want to get into law enforcement. So you do have to specialize a little bit, but I think psychology for me is great. Um, Theater and acting, if you want to get into mentalism, I would say is another good major. Why journalism? Pray tell. Journalism is a very good field for a deductionist because it teaches you how to be investigatory. It teaches you how to look at information in a critical way. Teaches you how to look past sort of the things people are telling you and read the subtext. It teaches you how to formulate a good argument based off of information that you've gathered. It teaches you to be observant because you know a lot of the things that journalists uncover are things that don't necessarily want to be uncovered, so you have to be observant. So again, and this is why I say it's better, like particularly good for if you want to get into the private investigator route because there's a lot of pouring through documents and things like that. Also, I think there's the element of writing and learning how to master your own voice and understanding how to speak and write effectively. I think that is is tied into deduction in a very particular way because being able to have a command over language, as far as being able to write and speak, means that you can command ideas more effectively because you can conceptualize things on a higher resolution because you have the words and you have the means to combine those words and sentences that flow and make sense. And so, like, the more I've learned how to speak and the more I've learned how to write, the better I feel I am capable of making deductions and reading people because I'm able to formulate those thoughts in my head better. So definitely, I think, and that's why I love English as a language because it's so versatile, it's so modular, it's so useful for open thinking. Although there are instances where a more structured language would, because the language you speak and the language you think in actually influence how you actually think, which is interesting. My mother is bilingual. She speaks Italian and English. She was born in Italy. So, and she tells me that she thinks in English for solving certain problems and Italian for others. And so that's something I'm working on. I'm working on learning Italian myself to be able to utilize that that ability of crossing a language structure to conceptualize things on a different mode, if you will. So that's why I think journalism is a good major for a deductionist. Deduction is fun and all, but it's not a very practical way to get a living. Would you recommend to take a major in the name of deduction or to keep it as a hobby? What was your experience? So, yes, deduction as in and of itself isn't a career option unless you go down the route of mentalism. So, if you want to go down that route, I would say theater. But in my opinion, there is really no field where deduction can't be of service. Think about it like reading. You don't necessarily have to learn how to read to be able to survive, but reading makes everything infinitely easier. Just the same with deduction. Being able to observe, remember, think, read body language, understand people, and do that all more effectively to be able to think more logically, to think more rationally, to observe better, to remember things more clearly, to be able to understand people that you're dealing with. There's literally no field where all of those things don't play into what you do on some level. So there's no career in which I think it can't help you in some way. As Ben Cardall puts it, it's the ultimately transferable skill set. Like, it's up there with language. It's up there with being able to read and speak effectively. I think there are only two quintessential skill sets. I think it's understanding people and being able to speak effectively and command of language. So those two skills, I think if you have those things, no one can stop you. Archaeology, I would say anthropology more than archaeology, you guys, because anthropology has to do more with people, but archaeology is so that would deal more with people reading anthropology. That is, archaeology would deal more with just the conceptual problem solving. But yeah, archaeology, as I understand, is more about the fossil record and the history of life and species on this planet, based off of the evidence available that we can uncover in the ground. Whereas geology is the evidence is the history of the Earth based off of the evidence of the actual rocks. Whereas anthropology is the history of civilizations based off of what we have dug up. Yes, medicine is another good. Like you can go into medical school and use deduction there, being able to infer what ailment a person had. Like it's the house thing as opposed to the Holmes. Uh, Sociology is, yeah, the social sciences, sociology, psychology, those things are good. Really, like I try and be as much of a jack of all trades as possible. My education, I'm trying to make as broad as possible. Um, so the major is really, you know, the most broad major of the majors I could think of, which was understanding people better, psychology. So that was my thought process in it. I need to know something. How do we keep ourselves objective when deducing about very attractive women? Uh, well, it's difficult to do, if not impossible. It's impossible to remain completely objective about anything. It's more impossible when you have an emotional or other irrational attachment to what you are observing. So, if it's a family member, you're going to have a bias there. If it's a romantic partner, you're going to have a bias there. And if it's someone you don't know but you are attracted to, then you're gonna have a bias there too. So it's kind of difficult. As for how to get over it, again, breathing exercises help minimize the physiological response that you're having. Um, Trying to look at the specific things, like instead of looking at the person as a whole, you look at the specific um, tells that are going to be insightful information wise. So shoes, hands, jewelry, tattoos, the basic things that you get a physical profile about, rather than looking at the general figure that is attractive to you. So those are some general tips. I found being in a romantic relationship helps with like being more objective about reading other women that I would otherwise be attracted to, but since I'm in a relationship, that's not really what I'm looking for anymore. So like obviously there's a little bit of that there, but uh it's on a little bit more of a leash. Uh well, that's at least how I work. I don't know if that's how everyone else works, but I guess you could call me a bit of a serial monogamist. Can you tell if someone has kids or siblings? It depends on the situation. Where am I from? The United States of America. My family's from Italy, though. How long have you been deducing? When did you realize that even though Sherlock Holmes is fiction, that his skills could be applicable on a realistic basis? My answer is the same for both of those questions. It's been the last 5 years. Okie dokie. Why do you never speak of L from Death Note or Near or Mello? They are like Sherlock. Yeah, except for the fact that they're not. Uh, so yeah. Deduction often overwhelms important things in my life. I was at my youth group and we have discussions in the talk. In the talk, it was super busy trying to read people, but I ended up not participating. Any tips? Uh, I would say you do have to compartmentalize in on some level. You can't just spend your life making deductions about everything constantly. At a certain point, once you've done this long enough, it becomes a second nature to you, so you don't have to think about it so much. But at this stage in your training, obviously, it is a fully conscious process, and you do have to compartmentalize at some level. You have to train as much as possible, but you also have to carve out the time specifically for training, so that in situations where you do have to think about other things, you can, but you're still climbing forward each and every day. Explain as far as my L from Death Note claim. Well, look, here's the thing. I enjoyed Death Note as a series, as a show. It was great. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the character of L. I enjoyed the sort of the chasing and the mental battles and all of that. But at the end of the day, the sort of this sort of situation that the premise of the show was so fantastical that everything else has to be fantastical. So yes, on a basic level, the things that L does are based in the reality of problem solving and reading people and profiling and things like that, but it's taken to a fantastical level beyond the degree of even some of the most fantastical Sherlock Holmes adaptations, to the point where, and I don't even really talk about Sherlock Holmes that much. Like, I wear the hat on live streams as basically just an homage. I put him in my thumbnails to get views. I used to talk about him more when I was trying to get more people on board with this. But as far as like my discussions about this are concerned, I'm more concerned with the actuality of the skill set rather than the fictional representations. I don't talk about Sherlock Holmes that much because I basically extracted as much as I could out of that. There, there there are creative licenses that are taken with any of these sort of fictional representations of problem solving and of reading people and of deduction. I'm much more interested in actual works now. I'm much more interested in works by actual body language readers, by actual profilers, by actual detectives. I'm much more interested in those things than I am fictional things, fictional characters. I'm much more, for me, L has always been much if more fantastical than Sherlock. Yes, there are some things that can be gleaned from him that are legit, but you have to like sift through so much that it's not worth my time, especially at this point when I'm trying to get more and more academic with this and less with the fictional side of this. So that's why I never talked about L. Also because you guys always wanted me to talk about him and I like pissing you off. So there's that. I've heard that women walk differently when they recently had sexual relationships. I have no idea of the efficacy of that. This goes back to your previous question of how can you tell if someone had sex recently? Is there a way to really know, like Sherlock does in season one, episode two? Uh, when did he do that in that episode? When did he do that? I don't remember the instance where in that show he did that. Again, that's one of the more fantastical representations of the character, anyway. So there's creative license taken. So if there's an emotion, like I wouldn't see unless it was very like uncomfortable. I wouldn't, or if there was an emotional angle to it that was cut. Maybe they had shame, or maybe they felt more proud. Um, you know, I would say more so there would be an emotional angle, and you could um, m- and there would be a lot of other tells that you would have to look for to determine that. But just by the way that they walk, um, unless it was a very specific circumstance, I wouldn't say you could normally deduce that. Oh, okay, I remember the instance now. Again, one, fictional. Two, that was an offhanded comment by one of the supporting one-off characters. Three, there was no specific example to go along with it, so really, I wouldn't base any conclusions based off of that. Do you think divergent thinking could be improved, i.e., thinking of as many possibilities to a situation as possible? Yes, I did see your comment earlier on one of my videos. I just didn't get a chance to respond to it. Um, Thinking of as many possibilities to a situation as possible. Yes, I think that can be improved. I think things that I showed earlier, like my spider charts, they help with non-linear thinking, and non-linear thinking is what you need to be able to do that sort of thing. Um, I I'm working on ways to use like my visual memory techniques, like the Mind Palace, to improve my thought processes by allowing me to use non-linear thought processes more by creating mind maps in my head rather than having to write them out. How can I ask if my deduct? How can I know if my deductions are accurate without asking the person I'm deducing for fear of sounding rude or forbearing? The way, if you're, there's no way of 100% confirming unless you ask. So get that out of your mind right now. Um, if you're worried about asking because you don't want to be embarrassed or you want to, um, or you don't want to be rude, just bring a clipboard, write down your deductions on the, or even a notebook. Either one works. Write down your deductions about a person on that, and then like go up to the person and be like, "Hi, I am like here." Be like, "Hi, I'm a psychology major, and I am working on a project that involves seeing how comfortable people are with telling a stranger about themselves. So, are you cool with me like asking you a few things about yourself? I have a few questions here, or if you just want to like, you know, tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your name? You know, and then if they don't have anything to say, or you can just go to the questions and be like, well, do you have any pets? And then, your deduction was they own a dog. They're like, yeah, I have two dogs. One's named Fluffy, and the other one is named Snickerbar. And you can be like, okay, that's kind of weird. Check. And then, you go down the list. You know, unless it's a specific deduction, like you deduce that they're right-handed because they're writing with their right hand. The chances of them being ambidextrous are so small that you can basically eliminate it, but not entirely. Uh, and I guess if you listen long enough, like if they're in a conversation with someone and you just like eavesdrop long enough, you can find answers to some of your deductions. But yeah, can you tell if someone is lying? Uh, yes. Is it easy? No. It involves a really careful examination of their nonverbal communication, as well as the changes in their vocal pitch, change in pitch, their word choice, the way that they phrase things, the idiosyncrasies in the events which they recount. Um, but you have to be careful about that too. In the nonverbal communication, you have to look for deception leakage through microexpressions, change in baseline. Those are the big ones, but there's no one specific cue to determine if someone's lying. So think about it like this: think about nonverbal tells, cues, like expressions, gestures, those sorts of things. Think of the individual tells and gestures as like individual words in a language, because that's what they are, because it is a language. It has its own grammar, it has its own sentence structure, just like a verbal language. Um, so you you can't like take one word out of the English language and say if someone says this word, that means that what they're saying is a lie. No, that's just not how it works. What you have to determine is the context of that word. What does the sentence say? What does the paragraph say? Are they lying based off of that? Same thing with nonverbal communication. You look at clusters of gestures and expressions and cues and tells. You look for a change in baseline. You look for nonverbal disunion. You look for when the nonverbal communication they're presenting is conflicting with their words, or when one gesture or one expression conflicts another. Um, you look for masking gestures. You look for masking expressions. So that tells you that they're hiding something that doesn't necessarily tell you what they're hiding. Then you have to use a little bit of reasoning and work backwards to determine what that might possibly be. And then you have to tailor your questions to then dig further and further and further in the right direction until you can more definitively prove something. But it's not just as simple as, oh, they leaked anger, they're lying, or they leaked fear, they're lying, or like it's just not how it works. Lie detection is extremely difficult. It's the most difficult part of nonverbal communication reading, and so you can do it. It's difficult, especially if you have an emotional bias. Like if you're talking with your significant other, chances are you're not going to be able to read them in the same way that you would be able to read, say, a suspect in a murder case. But even then, if you have anger towards the suspect in the murder case, you might lose objectivity in that too. So if you want more on lie detection, this is the book to read. This is Telling Lies by Dr. Paul Ekman. He explains all the pitfalls in in deducing lies through nonverbal communication. He explains how to do it right, all the things that you could miss, all the mistakes that you can make and that you're liable to make, and he explains it all in a way that allows you to figure out how to do it in the most effective way. So people often say I overthink things, but is there really any such thing? Yes. I was just talking about that earlier. I have a tendency to over intellectualize things too. For instance, if I'm over intellectualizing a problem and I assume that there is a rational thought behind an action in which there wasn't, maybe the thing that they're doing is something that they do just because they have always done it that way and they never really thought about it. Or maybe they're doing something out of an emotional reaction, or maybe they're doing something out of impulsivity. So there are more factors at play behind people's decisions than simply their rational thoughts. So if you over intellectualize the problem and you assume rationality where there is none, then you're overthinking it. Now, let's say conspiracy theories, for instance. I like conspiracy theories. They're fun. I think some are definitely more efficacious than others, and some are just like batshit crazy. So the thing with conspiracy theorists, like you know the type that I'm talking about, conspiracy theorist types. The thing with them is that they generally are hyper pattern oriented people. And so they are inclined to see patterns where there are none. They're inclined to see rational thought. They're inclined to see the movement of an unseen cabal of homogenous group of people where really that's just how the cookie crumbles. One fact about life is that nothing ever goes according to plan. All plans must be adaptable, otherwise, they won't work. Another fact of life is that people at the top of dominance hierarchies don't play well with each other because they're all dominant types of people. And so, the idea that a bunch of people in a one singular room have a cohesive plan on how to screw over the rest of the world is pretty silly when you understand how human minds work, especially minds of megalomaniacs. So, are there people trying to conspire against other people? Of course there are. It's not a cohesive group of extremely powerful people, though. They all have their own agendas and they're all trying to screw each other over. And so sometimes things just happen that aren't according to plan because the universe is an ever changing environment, both by the nature of the universe itself and by the nature of humanity. So, yes, there is such a thing as overthinking a problem when you assume rationality, you assume thought, you assume purpose where there is none. That's where the danger of overthinking things comes from. So, if you're looking at a problem from the angle of science and uh, logic and rationalization, and you're trying to understand the thought process behind a person who isn't thinking along those lines, you could be totally off the mark. I've had that happen to me before. So yes, I would say there's um, overthinking problems. Have you ever regretted making deduction, like you saw things you shouldn't? Like, lie to me, Dr. Lightman sees things about his partner that he shouldn't. Uh, Maybe. I try not to regret things. So, hello, I'm a high functioning autistic who talked to you last time. I am the high functioning autistic who talked to you last time. How do you feel about body language? Ekman is a genius. Body language is reading about the science of body language has really helped me with all of my emotional illiteracy problems that I had from my autism. It's really helped with that. Although in emotional circumstances, it's my intellectual knowledge of body language sometimes fails me. But studying body language out for someone like us is definitely something that is extremely helpful. And Ekman himself has even talked about that. Why is this called the holiday edition? I don't know, because it's December. No nut November. Solid, you guys. Do we have any more questions, or is this petering off to a close? How many books on body language do you have? Two right now, and there are others that are on my list of things to read. The next one I'm going to get is actually by Joe Navarro, who I have his first book, What Everybody Is Saying, but he just recently came out with the Dictionary of Body Language, or I think that's the name of it. But I'm going to get that as well. I want to read the definitive book on body language. I've heard a lot of good things about that. I want to read Emotions Revealed by Ekman and some of his other works, and I want to read Mark Bowden's book as well. But so I have a lot of things on my plate that I want to read, especially right now that I have a lot of reading for university to do, and um, right now I'm working my way through a textbook for a class that I don't even have. um, so yeah, I'm mildly insane. Can you tell the difference between dog hair and cat hair? Yes, I forget exactly what the difference is, but I can look it up real quick in my handy dandy book right here. Oh, so many books this time. Okay, dog hair tends to be straighter and shorter than cat hair, which often tends to be the opposite. If the cat hair is short, then it is often still wavier. So basically, dog hair is straight and long, cat hair is short and wavy. No, wait, dog hair is straight and short, cat hair is long and wavy. Definitely so. Thank you to Ben Cardall. Real quick, I'm going to rearrange these books. This is killing me. Okay. How many books you have read related to deduction? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7. That would be all the way through. I've read portions of other books. What book was that I just read? This is the Monographs by Ben Cardall. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Is there anything you just hate doing? There's a lot of things I hate doing. Most of them are the things that I need to do, but don't want to do. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the Fred the Frog cult meme? Do you ever think your audience would have in jokes? Taking the question one step further, what do you think about group psychology? Um, is the Fred the Frog cult thing an actual meme? Is it a meme? Like, because I would like to see those memes. That would be very funny. Right now, it's just an in joke, because we all understand it, and a newcomer to this uh, little get together here would not understand it. Um, so if you make it a meme, I'd be very happy. Um, but yeah, if you made it into a subreddit, I'd be ecstatic. As far as group psychology is concerned, I don't know enough about it uh, to really give an educated answer on it. So you'd have to get more specific with your question, but I can't give you like a broad synopsis. Thoughts on gut bacteria, effects on mental health, personality, etc. Uh, Going way outside the territory of which I am remotely an expert. Not that I'm an expert in psychology, let's say. Probably not an expert in deduction either, but like going way outside my field of expertise here. So I know very little about gut bacteria. I know it's important. Um, I know that there's a sort of Darwinian process as far as like the phylums of gut bacteria that like thrive based off of the things that you eat. I know that for lactose intolerant people, their human digestive system can't process lactose, but and the only thing that can actually digest anything out of it is the gut bacteria, which is what produces the horrible smell. And I know that the gut bacteria is important. It does regulate your mood. It does send signals to your brain. I don't know how all that works. So I find it way easier to profile someone with personality clusters. It's hard for me to trace back things like shirt stains. Do you feel the same? If you're building up a profile, certainly it's much easier to look at the thematic things, personality clusters. So like rather than the stain on their shirt, what is the shirt that they're wearing? It's what is the color, what is the texture, what is the style, what does that represent, what sort of implicit image is the person trying to put forth that is probably subconscious unless they have really thought through their appearance, which is going to give you more information about the specific circumstances in which you're seeing them. Things like the stains and things like that are going to tell you more about the specific circumstances that they're in. But if you want to learn more about their personality, you look at the implicit broad things that their presentation, their persona reports to you, what it's designed to report to you on a subliminal level. You then deconstruct that consciously. It gives you more of a personality profile. So I'm using the dictionary definition of meme. Also, I'll make the subreddit end meme. Yay! But don't expect nice memes. I'm talking deep fried greasy memes. Well, I've already had like really weird fan fiction written about me. So, like, just be relatively nice to Fred. Like, don't get all fan fictiony on him, please. I just said not to do something to the internet. Okay, no need to be next. We're just hearing your opinion. Okay, off the topic. How do you feel about etiquette and protocol for our kind to survive? I think that being polite is entirely determined by the um, okay, here's how I tackle politeness. There's a functionality to it, for sure. Sometimes I'm polite to people that I don't care to be polite to because I need something from them. It's just playing, working the system. Sometimes you have to do that. But at the same time, I try to be as honest as I possibly can. Sometimes I have to be a little bit more honest to myself than to others. So now we get into like what is honesty, what is truth, and that's a whole nother topic. But as far as I'm concerned, when I'm with people that I respect, I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm going to be honest with them. I'm not going to beat around the bush and be polite. I am a little bit of a professional asshole. That's what I do. But in that same spirit, I'm not doing it out of selfishness or caprice or anything like that. I'm not doing it to tear people down. And I'm very careful about when about the words that I use when I'm being honest, because you can be too brutally honest to the point where, yeah, you're being honest, but you're being so much of an asshole that it's not really helping. So you have to sort of phrase things in a way sometimes in which it's going to be heard rather than it's going to be listened to and internalized, and it's actually going to manifest something good in the world, or it's just going to be heard and it's going to make you feel smarter and them feel worse. So you have to strike that healthy balance, and so that goes down to implicit respect. What is the implicit respect you have for a person? If this is a person I don't have respect for, who I know isn't going to learn, who I know isn't going to take any information and do anything positive with it that I can give them, then no, I'm not going to waste any time phrasing my words carefully. But if I'm talking to someone who is, in a rough place or something like that, who's maybe a little bit crass with me, uh, because of those things, I can understand that, and I can still have some compassion and have some restraint. And if it's with someone I know, a friend of mine, I can. There's implicit respect there, and there's it's situation dependent is the thing. I myself am a high functioning autistic, and I have tendencies to isolate. I feel like often my deduction hobby has pushed me further out instead of further in instead of further out. Have you experienced this? Yeah, actually. Building this community has helped. Um, it's forced me to learn how to master my ability to speak to people as well. So that has helped. So yeah. Last time I saw a guy work, he was like 5'3", gay, not good looking, was singing and dancing pretty terribly, yet with a lot of confidence. What can we deduce about how he was raised? Well, now you're giving me a situation in which I have a few pieces of evidence and nothing concrete. I don't like situations like this because beneath all those things that you just said, which are characterized through a particular lens of your own implicit biases, is I'm not able to see the nuances of those individual pieces of data, but I will do my best. So take this with a pinch of salt. Um, Dancing and not very good at it. If he's not inebriated, then obviously he doesn't care what people think. What inebriation does to you is that it lowers your inhibitions, so you stop caring about what people think. But if he's not, then obviously it's just a part of his personality that he doesn't care what people think, or he's actively trying hard to get to the point where he doesn't care what people think. But if he's not assuming that anyone's watching, then we will assume that it is within his character to be overt and to if he's doing something where people could be watching, but he's not sure if people are watching, then we can assume that it is implicit in his character to be overt in his expression of himself, regardless of whether he's good at things. So he doesn't mind being the fool, which means he doesn't mind failing, which means he is okay with learning from mistakes, and maybe he's okay with not improving too. Maybe he's okay with just the mistakes. As far as how he was raised, that there's a lot of breaking away from structures there. There's a lot of irreverence for norms and what people expect. So in that way, it would be a guess, but an educated guess that his family probably did not take well to him coming out. So that's probably if I go any further than that, it's gonna be hell. So, and even that's on shaky ground. So we're gonna leave it there. There's fan fiction where Not telling you. Also, a deep fried meme is just a horrible edit. Oh, okay. That. Yes, I know what you're talking about now. Yes. Yes. Okay. Being polite is fake in most cases. People are full of shit. Agreed. But sometimes you have to do that to get what you want. It's really just a game of people dancing around things to get what they want. Sometimes you can circumvent that, and I take every opportunity I can to circumvent that. But sometimes you have to. Like, I do have to be polite to my boss if I want to continue paying my bills and taking my girl out to nice restaurants and paying my paying for tuition and things like that. I have to act in accordance with the way that people expect so that I don't get fired. Would I like to not have to do that? Yes. In circumstances where there aren't those risks associated with being impolite, do I take the opportunity to be impolite? Absolutely. So, yes, it's fake in most cases. That's why I try to be polite only when it counts as much as humanly possible, which is why my discussion focused on being polite to people that I have implicit respect for. Because in those cases, it's not fake. The politeness is an extension of the truth of how you feel about them and the truth about your respect for them rather than just the truth about the objective reality of the situation. Because the objective reality of the situation, as far as human connection is concerned, isn't necessarily the only thing that there is. Uh, what are your future plans? Mean to say what your income source in the future? I have a lot of different plans. Some of which involve scamming casinos with card counting. Some of which involve podcasting. Some of which involve starting a company centered around um, research. That's as specific as I'll get. What can we deduce about people who are ugly but have a lot of confidence? Can we safely deduce that they were raised in a good home with loving parents? What would you think? Again, depends on the specific circumstance. Depends on how you define ugly, and depends on how they define ugly. Uh, and it could go either way in that situation. They could either feel confident because they have been built up by their parents and their friends, uh, or they could feel confident because they've been put down all their life, and so now they're trying to rise above that. And so in that case, it would be feigned confidence, whereas in the former case, it would be implicit confidence, which are it's hard to tell the difference between those two unless you gerrymander the situation in which tells are going to present themselves to you. On the topic of how people were raised, thoughts on Freudian psychology, Freud got a lot right. There's a lot he got wrong, but the things that he got right are so fundamental that we might as well dispense with all of psychology if we say that Freud was wrong about everything. Uh, Too much to talk about for this, but we can talk about that at a later date. I don't have the energy to to start discussing Freud at this point. How to deduce people without being rude? Is there ethical code in deduction? I think that ethics in deduction are extremely important because being able to understand things that people try and keep hidden about themselves, it gives you an immense amount of power. Knowledge is power, and you can use that power in a manipulative or destructive way. The way that I think about it is that I'm not going to reveal the things about the people that I deduce. It's not my place. It's not my place um, to reveal those things unless I have specific go ahead from those people to do that. Like even with the project that I'm working on right now, where I had you guys send me pictures of your hands, I ask you, I asked you guys if you were okay with me posting those in a future video. Some of you were not. Some of you were, and so like even then, you can't even see the face, just the hand. But even then, some people are a little bit sensitive about it. So yeah, you have to be careful about what you reveal. And looking is harmless. revealing is dangerous. That's the golden rule. Is that you can figure out anything you want. As soon as you decide to vocalize it, that's when you get into territory where ethics have to play a big role. And so you really have to think about how you want to use this. I wouldn't say there are no official authorities. I think ethics are cross boundaries between fields. I wouldn't say there's an official code of ethics, but I wouldn't say it's all up to you. When is snapping in life okay? Just maybe cursing the daylights out of them, or maybe even beating them up. Very, very rare circumstances. And if you think that it's a good circumstance, it's probably not. Um, that sort of violent outburst should be reserved for situations where you are really in immense emotional or physical peril. It is acceptable in some cases, but which in that case wouldn't make it a snap, it would make it calculated because a snap implies that you've lost control. You need to maintain control when you assert your dominance because if you just snap, people can tear you apart. That if they know what's going on. If you maintain control and you assert yourself, then you remain dominant. So you have to think through what you say. You have to think through the things that you do. And resorting to physical violence, uh, I wouldn't recommend unless you're actively defending yourself. Would you join any secret agency? Will you join any secret agency? Probably not, but we'll see. I often ponder over the brain addict notion introduced in Sherlock. I have tend to err on the side of living by without realizing it or even having any real proof of its legitimacy. Thoughts. It's not a specific memory system like the mind palace. The brain addict is more of a conceptual view of memory. It's a way to hack your natural memory. It's you pay attention to the things that matter to you and you take interest in remembering them, and if something is extraneous, don't even bother with it. Just like don't even give it the attention. So like this shit this shit is not good for a brain addict. Because what happens? What happens? Let's see here. I open Twitter and I go through Twitter and what am I seeing? A bunch of extraneous shit. A bunch of extraneous opinionated shit. Uh Some of it's important. I try and only follow people who give me important information, but of course, I'm following friends as well who repost stupid things. So, I'm filling my brain with unnecessary information every time I scroll through Twitter, which is why I usually don't. Or through any social media. Personally, I don't have much interest in social media. To most people, it's like apparently fun, but to me, it's always been a chore. And I'm not to say that it makes me better than anyone else or anything like that. I don't mean it in like a contemptuous way, but like to me, I just social media has always been a chore. Um, but yeah, like the brain addict is a conceptual understanding of memory. It's a conceptual brain hack rather than a specific mnemonic technique. So there isn't a specific proof of it per se. Do you lift? Yes. Uh, I try to do more like body weight exercises, but like pull ups and push ups and things like that. And but I do some weight exercises, but like not. I tried to do like relatively low weight, but like either slow repetitions that are designed to like wear out those muscle fibers to go to those second order fast twitch muscle fibers, um, or um, or like really high power lifts of light weights. And if I do more heavy weights, like I'll do that just to keep the muscle fibers balanced out. But I do try and keep more of a fast twitch base rather than a slow twitch base. So yeah, and I'm trying to improve my cardio as well. Next semester, so at my university they do offer kickboxing classes, And so I haven't done martial arts in a few years, and I've really been wanting to get back into it. And since those kickboxing classes are covered in tuition, I'm going to start that next semester. So, but as of right now, I'm using the little exercise room that's at my office, and the uh, the gym at my university, and some free weights that I have at home, and my pull-up bar. And yeah, I try and exercise as much as I can fit in time for, but I definitely don't obsess over it, and I definitely don't exercise as much as I should. Are you a bit of a verbal thinker? I enjoy to talk to myself and objects and bounce ideas off of it. How often do you do that? Literally every day, all day, especially in the shower. Was playing cards with my friends yesterday. Found out that it could be a fun way to practice observation, positioning of the cards in hands, keeping track of the cards that have been thrown away, etc. Exactly, exactly. You should come and scam Vegas with me. I deleted all my social media when I started Deduction. Got rid of every social account I had. Not a bad plan. When you sit across from a person, what do you look at to make deductions? I'm trying this new thing where and I can't take credit for this idea. This goes to Ben Cardall, who has been mentoring me lately. Um, but what he suggests is looking at the what is the and he mentioned this in my interview I did with him. So if you want more of if you want a better explanation of this, go to my interview that I did with him back last year around this time. God, it was almost a year ago. Jesus. Uh, Basically, you look at the most standout thing about the person to you. So, what is the thing that first stands out about them to you? Maybe it's like if you're looking at me and you're just meeting me. "Well, why is he wearing a Sherlock Holmes hat?" Okay, like maybe that's the first thing that you start with, and you go on from there. What does that relate to? What you start with what interests you the most, and then you follow that path. Now, if you want to break it down more systematically, you can use the spider chart that I laid out earlier, the apparel and paraphernalia, physicality, verbal communication, and nonverbal communication. You can further break that down if you're just looking at the static physical tells. You could look at the shoes first, then shoes, knees, thighs, hands. So working your way up the body, torso, and face. I think that's an easy way to get a scan of a person. Have I tried judo? Yes, actually. Not for very long. I was like 11 and I got a yellow belt. I really enjoyed it though. But the martial art that I did for the longest and got the most into, I started that when I was like 14. I got out of it when I was like 17. Was Taekwondo, and I almost got to a black belt there, but I had to stop for financial reasons. I would have kept on going, but uh, that I thought was a really good martial art for giving me a base in martial arts. And the instructor I had was really good. He did incorporate like practical applications. We did do some self defense training. It wasn't a self defense class, so obviously there was the art, the traditional elements in there as well in the training. But it was a very much physical fitness oriented class with with a young instructor who was very forward thinking and like thinking about like how can you apply this and all that. So I really got really good instruction, really good physical fitness training from that, and a really good base for if I want to go into other martial arts in the future. Now I have the core mechanisms behind that from a pretty all-encompassing broad martial art. If I wanted to get into a more like specialized martial art, let's say, like we did some joint manipulation training with hapkido, which is tied to taekwondo, and so if I wanted to get back into judo or maybe jujitsu or maybe Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I have some joint manipulation training. I'm going to be getting into kickboxing, so I have a lot of kicking training. I have a lot of striking training. Now specializing that a little bit more with actual sparring and things like that. And not that we didn't do sparring because we did, but I'm getting off on a tangent here. What was the question again? Have you tried shooting? Okay, that was the question. Okay. I named my shower head Patricia to be able to yell a name when I have an epiphany. Lovely. My epiphanies are shouted at Fred. I just watched Elementary. You remind me of a younger Sherlock. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I haven't watched Elementary yet. I've been told I should. What is your favorite show or character based on Sherlock? Also, before clicking on this, sorry. I just watched the trailer for Will Ferrell's new Sherlock Holmes movie. Have you seen it? I refuse to see it. I hate Will Ferrell. I hate that he's taking on the role of Sherlock Holmes. Kill me. Like, if this is what we're coming to, kill me. What is my favorite show or character based on Sherlock? Oh, that's a pretty broad category. My favorite, I would say, my favorite modern adaptation of Holmes is obviously the BBC version with Cumberbatch. I would say my favorite classical adaptation of Holmes is Basil Rathbone's. That was like a series of movies rather than like a TV show. Um, uh, Characters based off of Holmes. What do you mean by based off of Holmes? I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say. I start from the shoes up because the shoes have the most information, Marion. But if top down works better for you, go for it. What are you up to at 12:43? Unless you're in another country time zone than it's 11:44 where I'm at. Will Ferrell is an abomination and a disgrace to put him and Sherlock in the same sentence together. Indubitably. Batman is based off of Holmes. Okay, fair enough. Yes. Yes, okay, Batman. Because he's Batman. Have I read all the Sherlock Holmes books? No, I haven't, but I should. I have all the Sherlock Holmes books, like literally from here, from here to here is all Sherlock. So, like, here, I'll just show you. Okay, first, this is the one I've had since forever. This is just the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. This is pretty much what everyone starts with. Like every Christmas, every birthday, people get me another like printing of the canon. So this is the greatest Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, with 4 of the complete novels and a bunch of the short stories. This is the complete novels and stories of Volume 1. This is the further adventures of Sherlock Holmes. This is The Hound of the Baskerville. And then I have I don't know where it is. It should be right here, but I have The Return of Sherlock Holmes as well, somewhere. Now, to put all this back. Oh no, no! I'm so disorganized right now. I need to get a hold of my life. What am I doing live streaming when finals are next week? Kill me. Why did I take all these books off of the shelf? Why am I such a show off when it comes to books? Okay. Wait, why do you know that there's fan fiction? When did you decide to look for it? I didn't. See, I have people looking for things on the internet for me. Like I have different. That sounded like weird. Okay, I have like contacts, people that have contacted me for one thing or another, and I've built up various connections. Um, of people that want to help me with the YouTube stuff, and one of them went above and beyond and was just looking for things that related to me. I assumed to help me optimize my search engine, notoriety, and just stumbled across some fan fiction about me, which was like, okay. Even my girlfriend hasn't read it yet, by the way, you guys. So like, don't expect me to be sharing links. If you can probably find it if you really look for it. I don't even know if it's still up though. We'll see. Maybe the person who wrote it is listening right now. Even though, I admit in the last years I've tried to get away from social media and all the useless info to protect my brain etiquette. I think it's imperative to know about pop culture, music, actors, etc. Yes, you do have to know, but I like to glance at the tabloid magazines whenever I check out from a grocery store, not because I have any interest, but because I know other people have interests, and I want to see what people are thinking. Not that the tabloids are really any more a good reflection of the gossip of the time. Um, Twitter and social media are definitely better for that. So I do keep a finger on the pulse of that, but you have to remain distant, which is really easy since I have no interest in celebrity gossip. Uh, have I ever learned to read a room? I have several videos where I do it, so yes. Anyone ever read the Case Closed manga? I haven't, but I know some viewers have. I need to find this fanfiction. Please don't. Have you played a Sherlock Holmes game? I have a board game called 221B Baker Street, which is fantastic. It's like Clue if Clue was good. So I like it. I love it a lot. It's fantastic. You have to get expansion packs for it if you want any replay value, because like it comes with 20 case cards, but after you've solved one case, like you can't replay it. So you can basically play the game 20 times. But they have like extra. I've bought like all the expansions for it, so I have like hundreds of cases to go through in that game. It's great. Um, and yeah, I played the Sherlock Holmes: The Devil's Daughter game on PS4. That was great. I love that game. Again, little replay value because you know how the cases end. So there's not a lot of solving it if you replay it. If I don't find, I will write a fan fiction about you reading the fan fiction. No, just no. I've dug myself a deep hole. Don't take that out of context. Okay, any final questions? I think we're going to call it quits because I'm going to go to bed soon. You should play Sherlock Holmes Crimes and Punishments. It's way better than Devil's Daughter. Is it? I've seen like some of it, and like I didn't like the voice acting, and like the character assets. Some of the character assets were literally the exact same as the Devil's Daughter, except not as good. So I don't know what was about that, and I didn't like the voice acting. And like I'm very very particular about voices. So yeah, like there are some podcasts I just cannot listen to because of the voices, which is horrible because my day job is editing podcasts, and sometimes we have guests on that literally make me want to drive a pencil through my ears, and I have to edit thousands of cuts because I have to cut out all the breaths and all the stumbles and all the ums. And yeah, so sometimes I just want to die at the end. But sometimes, like if the voice is okay, then it's not a problem. If the voice is not okay, then I will die. So, oh, Chloe Mason, no, you came at the end. I'm sorry. King Todd, I'm just going to stop responding to you. No, I haven't listened to the Pen Addict. Is that just someone clicking a pen? Because that's what it sounds like, and no. What was your favorite part in Sherlock Holmes' The Devil's Daughter? I like as far as the story was concerned, I enjoyed the scene where Holmes and Watson were in the carriage together, just having a chat before like there was a huge like catastrophic crash, where you then have to like figure out how to like get everyone to safety. Uh, but like the scene leading up to that, where they're just arguing in a carriage, was quite. I enjoyed that from a storytelling standpoint. As far as mechanics in the game, I really enjoyed the disguises. I enjoyed the deduction making um, mechanic, and I enjoyed the like solving the case mechanic. I thought those were all like good, solid representations of sort of how it works. Obviously, with that sort of like telescopic view that all Sherlock Holmes adaptations have that you just don't get in real life. It's not like you can just like, oh, zoom in, enhance cliche. No, it doesn't work like that. No. Have I read about gate analysis? Not much, but I know about it. It's an hour-long podcast about pens and paper. That can be interesting because of ink types, mechanic uh, thing, and nibs. Okay, I'll check it out. I will check it out. Thank you. All right, guys. I'm going to call it quits for tonight. Ah, no. Goodbye, you guys. Well, see you later. I have completely lost my mind at this point. I'm just gonna. Okay. Oh, Todd, don't worry about it. It's all in good fun. Please don't worry about it. You're fine. Don't go to bed like wondering, oh no, did I comment wrong? Does he hate me now? It's fine. Totally. Just go to bed. Have a good night. You did not offend me. We're all cool. All in good fun. All right. Have a good night, you guys.